Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how to fly the F-35B by IFE developers. Now this was an aircraft I initially resisted because I'm like, it doesn't have a brumbly engine on it, and it's probably pretty electronic, and I don't know if I like it, but there's actually some really neat things about this, and I hope to share them with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we climb inside this very, very, very good visibility aircraft. I've tried this one out in VR, and while the performance on this aircraft is not the greatest, not like physical, like going fast performance, but as in frame rates, it's amazing. Like, you just cannot believe how well you can look around and see things near you. There's like no junk here blocking your view. I love the fact that we have a widescreen TV instead of, like conventional gauges. We do have one conventional gauge down there if you need it. We also have the HMCS, which unfortunately you can't move your head and it doesn't go with you like you get like in DCS, but that's all right. So let's go ahead and go get started here. So first things first, we got some red stuff we got to get rid of. So we're going to pop that out. And then this is a big thing. This is safe and arm. This is for the ejection seat. You're not really supposed to arm this until you're basically rolling up to the little taxiway, but I'm going to forget, so I'm just going to do it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to swing over to this side. We just have a couple switches to flip. Like I said, this is a very, 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 very electronic airplane. So what I'm going to do is IP is going to come on, ICC is going to come on, ICC2. We're going to flip on bat switch, and there's this little thing that says the word not ground D10 override, master ignition switch. You're just going to set that to the on position. So we're good on this side. Coming back to the front, if you take a look, actually I'm going to close up the hatch so I don't deafen myself here. Coming up to the front here, we have our digital display here. One of the things you're going to see is this is MFSOV closed. So this is our main fuel valve. To disable this, we come over here and we press this button like this, and what that will do is allow fuel now to flow to the engines. Remember, we are the B version, so this is the short takeoff and landing, which we'll take a look at in a minute. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to swing over here and click this to start. Isn't that nice? You just click it to start. There's no like drama, there's no like pressing special buttons. I don't have to like click the throttle over when I get to just the right RPM or anything. If anything, all we do is we come over here and we look at all our gauges starting to get bigger and bigger numbers with time. While we're getting started up though, we might as well have a little bit of fun with some of the other options. I'm going to go get the HMD going. That's this guy right here. This is an HUD as far as I'm concerned because it does not follow my head when I move it, but hey, I'm impressed that it's collimated properly. Coming down here, of course, one thing we can do is we pop over the menu. I've got a bunch of different options here. I just love the fact this is all touchscreen, although I can tell you from flying in the real world that touchscreens aren't always as good as you want them to be. They're actually very, very difficult to click on things. I like how there's console brightness, there's indicator lights, we can make things brighter, darker. You have different programs for strobe light, like I'm going to put position lights on, I'm going to pop the formation lights on. You can even adjust the brightnesses. Again, we can't control these things here, which is kind of a bummer. But you could actually normally like, ooh, I want to do a whole light show like it's Christmas or something like that, which I find just, I don't know, just interesting. That's really kind of the way I feel about that. Obviously, you can turn these on and off, but it's a nice day outside, so I'm not worried about it. Next, once we do that, of course, you'll notice that my engine's pulling up here. I got a little bit too on thrust. Think of this as percent of maximum thrust. Gas temperature, obviously, a nozzle. We have our RPM, we have our N2 RPM, and of course, we have our oil pressure. I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's nothing bad. One thing I like to do, though, to kind of save on frames a little tiny bit, is if you click on this, we'll bring it up to the big screen. If you click, this is what allows you to basically cycle between your different menus. One thing I like to do, too, is if you come to the tippy top, there's a swap button. If you push that, it puts all this stuff on the right, and it puts all kind of the auxiliary communication stuff on the left. If you are an F-16 driver, this is probably going to be more intuitive, except for this one right here. If you're an F-18 driver, this might be more intuitive. Like I said, it really does not matter. It's whatever you prefer to do here. So one thing we do is once we got that all started up, like I said, I like to put this away. So what I'm going to do is pop up here. You can really pick anything here. We can go to search mode. Like I said, you have all these different functions. None of them work, unfortunately, which someday when we play DCS 6, we'll have some of these capabilities. But once we got the thing searched, again, we can come up here and say, oh, we didn't want that. We wanted the surveillance radar. It's like, okay, you could do that too. Like I said, this is basically magical technology. We are literally a UFO here. So what I like to do is, like I said, keep this as simple as possible. We can, threat warning display. You can pop that there, and you can click here, and look at this. It creates this little tiny thing down here. Just love that. So we're now started. If you come back over to our start switch, you'll notice it's in the green position. We're started. That's it. Let's go. Poking around outside, you can see everything's looking pretty solid there. You got my little formation lights here. The position lights are on. I can give everything a hardcore wiggle, and everything's just a little chunky. Like, it's not smooth. It doesn't feel like I'm making hydraulic pumps. Actually, I think these are electric servos here. But, you can do all sorts of silly things like that. It looks pretty good. So what I'm not going to do is activate the lift fan yet. Again, we have very little knowledge on how to actually operate one of these. It just feels like one of those things that you don't want to do until you're ready to use it, just because it likes to suck stuff off the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the parking brake, I tap the gas, and that's going to be more than enough to get us going. This thing is just, it's not overpowered. That would be the F-15. Now, if you want overpack, actually, the Big 31 is pretty powerful too. But the F-15 is just like, let's go. Just like how one of my former students said. So we're going to start making our way up here. If you ever need to change communication radios, by the way, clicking right here, it just comes right up. So, for example, if I want to get ground control, I can come in here, 119 point. You can click on the one you want to change, type in the new frequency, and then you press this button for enter, and you can see that just gave me the communications over at Hartford if I needed to talk to them, which in this case I don't, but that's perfectly fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically execute a couple different takeoffs here just to kind of demonstrate the different capabilities of this particular airplane. Keep in mind you want to use the aircraft takeoff that matches your profile. So in this case, if you noticed a little earlier, I'm not really carrying a lot of fuel in this thing. I've got a little less than half a tank. And if I were carrying a bunch of bombs, we could not do a vertical takeoff. We'd have to do a short takeoff, but I'll deal with that one in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm lining myself up with the big number 2 here. Like I said, these guys have a really, really good Japanese restaurant right here. For those of you who are in the Westfield area, you can't drive up, you want to fly up. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, press the hook Stavol button, push that. Ooh, that looks so unnatural. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. It's like a tail. Shark sneaking up on you or something. I don't know, just kind of neat. So what we're going to do is you'll notice his hover button is blue, which means we can do a hover takeoff. So we're actually going to do this. I've had a little bit of trouble with the auto takeoff button. I don't like it. So what I do like to do is press hover. And when you press that, it's going to point all your throttles down. Now, here's a weird thing about the hover. Your throttle is not up and down. Your stick is up and down. As a matter of fact, if you look at my throttle glitching out here. Don't worry, nothing bad, nothing bad. It's normal, it does that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back on the stick. And we go vertical. If I let go of my control stick, we just hover. So right now, if I look at the stick, again, this is a classic stick. I push down, we go down, I pull back, we go up. Now, if I want to shift, I just can tilt it left and right like that. And if I want to change which way the nose is pointing, I just use my rudder pedals. In this case, you can see me stomping the left pedal there. Don't worry about the throttle. That's perfectly normal. It's just an illusion. You're just hallucinating. You can see just like that. You can also notice that the front wheel is wiggling when I do this, which is just kind of silly. So that is our hover mode. If you're wondering why the aircraft is tilted, that's because it's automatically compensating for the wind right now, which is actually keeping me in place. So now here's the tough part. How would you land like this? It's actually really easy. So what I like to do is I like to look at my little vertical speed, which is going to be right here. So I'm going to push that. You see how this is about 100? I'm going to go, pull back just a little bit on the stick. So I'm going to get that to about 100 feet per minute. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And then you can go over here and press VS hold. Then you can let go of your stick. Like my stick isn't even being touched. Now notice the aircraft is still settling at right about 101 feet per minute. At any point, I can cancel this effect if I want to. Remember, don't touch the throttle. Ignore the fact it's glitching. It's going to do that. So this is it. I can just sit here and wait for the plane to get nice and low. So what I do when it gets really close to the ground is I click VS hold off. Everything stops, and you can see I'm just... I make it look easy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my nose down just a tiny bit, and that's it. We're down. You're going to go hold the brakes, throttle back, and just like that, we're ready. That's it. So now what I'm going to do is notice automatically hover has been deselected. We're now back to Stavol mode. If we wanted to do a conventional takeoff now, of course, we can come over here and pop this button, but we're going to do a Stavol takeoff because why not? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and we're going to fill ourselves up with a nice hearty tank of gas. And now no, hover is completely red. We can't use this function anymore because we're just too darn heavy. Just too darn heavy. Also notice, if you look up here, we've got G, T, and we have I and E. This is how much fuel we're carrying. This would be, of course, this is our gross weight. This would be our total fuel. This would be our internal. This would be our external fuel. You click on this, it brings up this, which we've already seen over on this side. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. By the way, before I set up this mission here, inside of Flight Sim, what I had done is I had used the default flight planner for this purpose. If you want to do like a custom flight plan, it's not easy to do from what I've seen. If you actually go up to our navigation menu and you start kind of fitzing with it, hold on, let me grab it real quickly. We have all sorts of autopilot functions here. We have all of our communication stuff here. You've got your navigation. If you go down your navigation page, you're probably going to notice that there's not a lot of stuff in here as far as waypoints and stuff like that. We can obviously select our next waypoint if we wanted to. You can see with waypoint 1 is time climb, waypoint 2 is all these other things. We can't, unfortunately, edit these directly. And see how it says UTM is unop. Unfortunately, that means we're kind of busted in that regard. So if we wanted to be able to edit those, what I actually recommend doing, if you're not going to do it in the main one, is get something like the GTN 750 or have some kind of external GPS that you can use to basically dial things in. The other thing, of course, you could do is you could dial stuff in. You can see how it automatically kicked out those Microsoft waypoints here. So I can go up into here. I can come down here and I can do a direct to. Let's say we want to go up to. Let's keep it real simple here today. We'll go up to Boston because Boston's going to be about 5 minutes for us. Boston, activate, and you can see that it's going to automatically update all this information for you. All right, I like that. Of course, you can change the waypoint you're on by clicking these buttons if you need to, but like I said, it's gonna get a little glitchy, so you want to be kind of careful with it. Direct to Boston, activate, good enough, cool. So the next thing we want to take a look at while we're operating this aircraft is a couple of our different other navigational options. By the way, to get here, you just click right here. We're going to be interested in things like ILS. We have our TACAN if we want to. For example, if I would like to receive one nearby, I can simply come up to the thing that says TACAN channel. You click right here, and you just type in the code. In this case, 027 would be the one near me. If you want to use VOR ILS, you can just click on it and then type in your frequency. This would be another one near me, just like that. Oop, 1149. Press the up arrow to be enter, and you can see it automatically grabs everything. If you want to adjust your course, we have a little option over here for heading and course input. So if I click on course, see how it pops up? So I can come down here and I can say, oh, I want 190 or something like that. And you see how it automatically adjusted the course. Now, if you have something on your joystick that allows you to change your course that way, you can actually come in here and adjust your joystick that way as well. Now, if I wanted to adjust the heading bug, it's the same idea. I can click right here with heading up. Let's say I want to do due east, type in 900. Yeah, that makes sense. 0. Now I've done it. Oh, apparently we're going on this new heading of 900 here. So that should be a very enjoyable flight for us. 187 090. Bingo. So now you can see it automatically selected east, and you can see this one. Another common problem you're probably going to have with this one is you notice how it says VOR HFD right here. If we want to change this particular mode that we're using for our navigational purposes, we have to change what mode that we're going to be on. Now that's one of those things that you have to kind of be mindful of as well. You come up here, obviously you've got all your different options as far as, actually deciding how you want to get from one place to another. But to actually adjust what source of navigation you're using, you're going to make your way up here and see where it says CNTL. We simply click that, and you can see that automatically swaps what particular mode you're on. Keep mashing that, you can see that we're on the GPS mode now. You can hit it again. You can see it switching to all the different modes that you can possibly be on. Just got to be mindful that the one that you selected is the one that you actually intend to fly to. Like right now, you can see very clearly that this is my selected waypoint, but that my little OBS, my CDI, has not deflected to actually represent that. So it's one of those things you want to kind of keep an eye out. It's a little funky how some of that works, so kind of just be mindful of it when you are using it. So let's go ahead and get this boat on a show, a row on a show. We're going to do a short takeoff learning here. This is super duper simple. What we're going to do is we're going to hold down the parking brake, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to pull the stick back just a tiny bit. You don't have to pull it back all the way or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to smoothly apply power. We're going to release the brakes, and we're going to smoothly apply the rest of the power. And all you have to do is just gentle hold back here. And off we go. Jack the landing gear. And now we're going to go into transition mode. Just going to reach over here and press hooks to bull. And what's going to happen is the aircraft will transition on its own once it's ready. And that's it. We're on our way. That's all there is to it. Like I said, very, very, very... It's a UFO. It's not a real plane, folks. It's basically a UFO. That is an incredible roll rate. You're going to get all sorts of warnings. Don't worry, it's nothing bad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point in the general direction of Boston, and we'll start making our trip there. Out of the way so I don't confuse myself. There we go. Come to the right just a tiny bit more. One of the nice things is you do have automatic trim. It's just not good. There are aircraft and simulators that have much, much tighter automatic trim than this one. Alrighty then, so that will get us to our destination. I'm just going to hold it at about that angle. One thing you can see if you want to check the trim, you can look at this little display, and that's the auto trim setting right now. Coming over on this side, this is almost like an analog speedo here. This is your airspeed indicator. You can see we're doing 350. Here's for the details. This is also going to be your altitude. Underneath, you're going to have your vertical speed. Of course, you have your radar altimeter on the bottom there, depending on exactly what you need to do. Like I said, it's too bad you can't just dial that in directly, because this would be a lot simpler if you could. I'm swinging that sucker around. Like I said, once you've defined everything in here, you're going to have to be sitting there. There we go. That's the one we want to be on. One more for victory. I think we need to be, what is the desired track there? Close enough. All right, we're about 15,000 feet. Climb on this one. It all comes down to what you're trying to achieve. If, for example, you're trying to do a maximum performance climb, what you can do is you can push the throttle all the way forward, and you can go ahead and push this nose down, and you're going for about 300 knots. Once you go ahead and get yourself at about 300 knots, then you want to pitch your nose up for about Mach 0.8. So go ahead and do maximum performance here. There's 300 knots. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start pitching upwards. And you can see my Mach number starting to rise in the bottom left corner there. 78. There's about 0.80. Pull that nose up just a tiny bit more. 0.83. That looks pretty good right there, about 0.84. Like I said, this thing it's pretty high performance. It's allowing me to get away with this pretty aggressively here. There's 0.85. Anything past that is basically going to be a waste. 27,000 feet, still 0.85. Ah, we're starting to lose some power here. Pretty typical. Go ahead and let the nose come down. I'm also going to shut off the afterburner. We just don't need it. On down. I don't know why this comes default so zoomed in. It looks cool and everything. It just doesn't need to be done that way. Now, one thing you got to watch out for with the afterburner is if you disable the afterburner, as soon as you push the throttle forward again, it will re-enable the afterburner. So just kind of be a little mindful of that. It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky. So let's get up to about 36,000 feet here. At this time, we're just on full throttle. We're not on anything special. Nose up just a tiny bit, and we're good to go. So now normally this thing would be pretty easy to fly, but you can see I'm getting bounced all over the sky. I don't know if that's something with the flight control system or just the turbulence model in Flight Sim. One thing you probably notice is if you look at the top of the screen, I got this little caret right here. This thing is your best friend. It's basically recreating this green arrow, which lets me know exactly where I need to go. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the automatic pilot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this big thing that says AP and click on it. So you have all your modes right here. So what I'm going to do is pre-select an altitude, click on it. 36, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and click on altitude hold. Notice the FD came on automatically. Go ahead and press AP, and notice you get this little display that pops up here. So what I'm going to do too is I'm going to come down here and click on route hold. And what that's going to do is it's going to automatically grab onto our route, do some quick little math here, and then get us nice and locked on back to it. You can see I'm doing 0.97 here. I'm not trying to do 0.97. It just does 0.97. We're just that quick. So we have another bunch of fun little options here. We have the ability to set specific courses if we're doing a VOR. We have the ability to even set a specific speed. So right now we're doing about 330. Let's say I want to do 315. So I can come in here, click on speed, 315, just like that. Click on speed hold, auto throttle on. You want it to be white to indicate that it is enabled. So it's going to happen in about half a second. As you're going to notice, we're going to start sinking very, very, very quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip on the vertical speed hold. Ooh, let's go ahead and press the enter key there. Delightful. Vertical speed. And we'll start making our way up. If you feel the thing sinking, you can always just take over the controls. Like I said, the autopilot on this thing is a little weird. I don't know how I could be stalling at 350 knots, but I'll allow it. There we go. Back on course. Like I said, there's a couple little oddities. And see this kind of action right here? I swear this is a flight sim thing, because it just does not do that in a real plane. And again, I've never flown an F-35. I can't speak for it. Well, let's get this thing back under control. There we go. Nice. Speed holds on. Autopilot on. I don't know why I decided to speed hold at 300. There we go. Nice. And there you can see command 300 right at the tippy top. And you can see the aircraft is sort of making its way back up to where it needs to go. Hey, see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? And it's definitely one of those where you just kind of want to set it at the altitude you want it to be at, then trim it, then turn the autopilot on, rather than trying to go to war with it. Because as you can see, it can be a little picky. So when we're done with the autopilot, of course, you can click right here and disable that, and now we can start making our way over towards Boston. Like I said, this is a very, very, very quick plane. It does not take much. That's the trim for you. And that is wonky. I feel safer without the autopilot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fly our way in the general direction of our destination. Like I said, I don't need anything too sophisticated here. But one thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to shut the auto throttle off, because this thing sucks. Give me some of that fire. Nice. Man, the trim on this thing is just a little funky. I'll show you the difference between the trim. Like where I'm holding. This is where I'm holding it. This is where the auto trim thinks it needs to be. Interesting. Very interesting, because that's just not right. But again, we're not here for that. We're just here to make you aware of some of these little quirks here. All right, so we got a ground speed of about 700 knots. We're just busted at the speed of sound without too much difficulty at all. And we'll come pick it up when we get a little closer to Boston. All right, we're just about to Boston. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and begin our descent now. Again, this is a military aircraft. There's no necessarily dead set procedures that you're supposed to use here, but I'm going to use the classic, basically flipping the plane upside down. And I'm going to go ahead and send out the speed brakes, which looks like they would come right off the wing if that was the speed brakes. Flip us back the other way. Ooh. And now we'll make our way into a nice landing in Boston. All right, looking good. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up for a pretty standard landing. We're not going to do a short takeoff or anything. You're going to get the nice little check gear warning. This aircraft is really heavy right now, so unfortunately it makes it a little difficult. I'll go ahead and pause real fast here. We have another interesting oddity with this particular aircraft model, and that's the fact that this little guy right here is basically your angle of attack staple, we call it for the F-16 folks. So the problem this aircraft has is when they model this heads-up display, which clearly they just got off the F-18, they model this completely backwards. That's not how it works. Normally what would happen is when you're coming in for an approach, you'd want this wing to basically sit right at the top of the staple, and then when you go to reduce power to land, you just back it up a little bit. Putting it right here runs the risk of smacking into the speed brakes, at least in that F-16, and down here usually means you're pulling back a little bit too hard. So if you take a look right now, this says that we're perfectly on angle of attack. This is not going to match the one that we want. You can see we're about 7.8, 7.9 AOA here. The speed doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters is that we're on the correct angle of attack during our approach here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and unpause, and I will start getting set up for that angle of attack. See how the staple, if I push down, the staple goes up. It should be going the other way, but that's okay. So landing this aircraft is pretty typical. One of the fancy things that kind of gets in your way is the automatic trim. One of the things you'll find as you're kind of setting up for a landing is if you're coming a little hot, one of the simplest methods to kind of burn off that speed. See how I'm pulling back and I'm going under the staple? That's backwards. It kills me. Absolutely kills me. It's almost like difficult to land it because of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my flight path vector right on the end of the runway, which is a little circle with a little wing on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed the throttle in until I see that the angle of attack is perfectly centered there. I'll get a little bit of throttle there, a little bit of throttle there. It does not take much with this plane. And you can see how now I'm just a little bit fast, but you can see how that little staple, that little backwards letter E now, and just by tapping the gas a little bit, can get itself nice and centered. There it goes, right there. That's what you're looking for. It's about 8 degrees AOA. So that gives me a speed of about 160 for this particular approach. Now we're a little high, so I'm going to go ahead and hold the nose down just a little bit. And we're just a little bit on highs. Pull the nose back up. Notice how quickly and easily you can accidentally your speed there. There we go, nice. So I'm well established. I got the flight path vector on the end of the runway. You see I got my angle of attack preset. At about 155 here. And all we're going to do is a minimal flare. That's what I have read. Lift the nose up, throttle to 0, and we're just going to wait. And we're down. Ouch. I think we need to try that one again. That was embarrassing. Let's try that again. Again, flight path vector right on the end. Make sure your angle of attack is set correctly. Pull that nose up. Getting a little fast here. Holy crap. What was that? This aircraft's fly-by-wire system is very strange. Like, it just does things. Nope. This time, definitely. So as you can see, this aircraft is a bit more of a handful than I think, because I'm kind of fighting a computer more than I'm fighting anything here. Alright, we are on speed, we're on angle of attack, everything's nice and dirty, it's the way it should be. I don't read into that statement too much. Hey, own your mistakes, everyone. That's the way you get better. There we go. Schwitzing here. There we go. All right. So as you can see, this aircraft was one of the more involved ones. And yes, I did practice landing it from before. I was just having a heck of a time with it. So like you saw kind of there, it was really a matter of trying to get that really, really stabilized approach and bring it in. Even though this is all nice and computer controlled, that fly-by-wire is a little involved. And you really, 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 really got to stay on top of it. Otherwise, it's going to kind of get away from you. I wish the frame rate in this plane was just a tiny bit better. But again, it's my fault for not practicing more. So as you can see, this is a very, very, very solid aircraft. For those of you who are looking for like a very, very ultra-modern experience, I think this is definitely going to do it for you. Some of the avionics, absolutely solid, as you saw. You definitely got to play with the autopilot. The trick to the autopilot I found, by the way, is you basically have to trim it to hands off, then press the autopilot button. It doesn't do a very good job of getting to the position that you need it to do. That's just kind of the way it works. Another thing that I want to mention too is you have a couple different versions of this aircraft, and one of them actually has a really neat trick. Now, if you're wondering, we quickly swatched over to the F-35C because this one has kind of a fun trick like I was just hinting at. It actually has the ability to simulate a carrier takeoff. So what I've done is I've come to Ellington Airport, which as you can see is only about 1,800 feet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to press this neat little button that says L bar. So what that's going to do is it's going to put down the imaginary landing bar. It's actually a quite solid one right there. And now that it's engaged, all we're going to do is do full throttle, disengage the parking brake, and prepare to be launched very, very, very hard. So we'll go ahead and push the throttle all the way forward. We're going to crouch on the deck, release the parking brake. Woohoo! That's great. Alright, so hopefully you found this video to be helpful. Like I said, it's a neat plane, definitely worth checking out if you're into it. Some of the avionics stuff is a little weird. Remember, you can always swap those panels on any which way that you're looking to do. And obviously, depending on which version, it's going to have some kind of weird little oddities with it as far as hovering or short takeoff and landing. Kind of keep an eye on all the different autopilots and trim settings, otherwise you might get a bit of a surprise. But other than that, enjoy.